Hello, Swole Sisters.
Worldwide.
All right, we haven't done a Facebook Live in so long for just our chats, which, by the way, I would like to come up with kind of like a fun word. I don't know if you saw my post, but I was like, your favorite swole heads, Justine and Jen.
For the people.
What?
For like who we are.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like a fun name for like these chats that we have, because I feel like chat is a little too casual. Anyway, we could just think about it.
Yeah, I will think about it. It's gonna come to me at 3:00 in the morning.
That's fine. Jen and I both have our adorable mugs.
Yes.
Hers is way prettier.
Lindsay's here. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. So we are here today to talk about reestablishing some healthy habits that may have fallen to the wayside during the insanity that has been a pandemic that is sweeping the globe. So it is completely normal if some of the habits that you had established, let's say maybe not eating after 7 o'clock, waking up and working out before work, meditating 3 times a week, journaling, right? Whatever what you would consider to be your healthy habits, it's possible, probably likely, that they got completely blown out of the water. I'm pretty sure Jen is the only one who maintained her healthy habits through this.
No, I also, well, that's what I want to talk about, is I have maintained most of my habits, but I've also gained, in addition, some less than healthy habits.
And it should also be said, and we'll touch on this later, that yes, Jen was able to maintain a lot of her healthy habits, but she also has been practicing those healthy habits for upwards of a year, or some of the habits even more. So it just goes to show how that consistency can just become so helpful, so that instead of trying to practice these habits in a crisis, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. Now I need to meditate. Like we talked about this, actually, one of the last live chats we did, right? That doesn't really work, but it will work if you put everything in place, preparing for things to go to hell, which they will, whether it's a global pandemic, somebody in your family becomes ill, you become ill, you have an injury, you lose your job, right? So I think it's just so important. I think we should talk more in depth about it, just that like having these in place beforehand is very helpful, as Jen can attest.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we're at a point where this is the new normal for who knows how long. So initially there was like that shock and the adjustment period, and we all handled that shock differently. My favorite thing to do every time we got a new bit of news was to take a 3-hour nap. I just completely shut down. Other people like rev up and get into kind of like erratic action.
So it's interesting because Jen and I are very opposite. Jen, I don't know how to describe it, but like she was napping a lot, resting a lot as she took in the crisis and all the information. And I am the exact opposite. Like I was like absolutely working from 7 a.m. till 8:30 at night every single day for the first 10 days. I mean, it was insane. I was like completely manic. So again, I think it's interesting because Jen and I do tend to handle things differently, which is why we make such a great team.
Yeah. But it did, I have to admit, sometimes I was like, man, Justine's really getting a lot done and I'm just kind of tired.
I know, but that's kind of what I mean about, like, I have to let Ruby out, but that's what I mean, when I was doing a little bit of blogging about like how people think, oh, personal trainers are just like these perfect people, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, I work out because if I don't work out, I will lose my mind. And that's why I work hard sometimes. It's like, it's not a virtuous thing. It's not virtue or high morals. It's like, I feel like if I don't work, I will lose my mind. So that's why I do it. It's not because I'm like, oh, great. You know what I mean?
But it does get a lot done when you do that.
Well, that's true.
So as I was saying, we're now at this point where hopefully a high percentage of you are ready to start incorporating more routine and more habits. There may be some people still dealing with some mental health things, or people that are working in hospitals and life maybe is just too crazy to worry about this stuff. And if that's the case, don't feel bad, and don't feel like you're not keeping up. But if you're thinking that you're ready to start actually doing that, then this is for you.
That's yeah, I like that idea. And I want to say too, if it feels as though it's too much, and again, for some people, it might just be like overload. Like I just read a great post where they were calling it like, if this is beyond the bandwidth that you have, which I love that.
Yeah.
Verbiage. But I think another way to talk about it is just how tiny do you have to make the habit in order to make it doable? You know what I mean? Right. Because chances are, if you're thinking of a habit and you're like, well, there's no possible way I can do that right now, you could probably continue to just make it tinier and tinier and tinier. Like for me, I was journaling and writing my 3 gratefuls. I'm not journaling anymore. I'm just writing the 3 gratefuls. And then during the 10 days to 2 weeks, the things were really hellacious. I was writing just 1. And I just allowed myself, as like, I didn't see that as a failure that I didn't get 3 in. I just was like, just try to think of one thing, just one, you know what I mean? So maybe that could be a good way too. If you're having like, oh, I couldn't possibly do this right now, that's way too overwhelming. Well, take a look at your goal. Are you saying, oh, I need to start working out again 5 days a week? That might be a little bit too much. In what ways can you minimize? Is that the word I'm looking, or simplify?
Yeah. I think one of those words works.
Yeah.
A couple other examples, like say drinking water, like you're not drinking a lot of water. You could have this goal to drink, let's say 3 liters of water in a day. And that might be like a bigger goal. Or maybe you're like, okay, I'll have water with every meal. And then to make that goal even smaller, have water first thing in the morning. And I feel like I always go to the morning. For me personally, that's the time, if there's anything I want to incorporate, like that's the time that it's going to get done. And the later I go on into the day, the less likely that it will be that way. So you, for habits, Justine, you're having some gratitude, practicing gratitude. That's one thing.
So I'm maintaining that, and I don't do it every day, because honestly, sometimes I do forget. But it's been about a 4 to 6 day a week habit of mine for it's got to be like 6 to 7 months now.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that when I do it, it's almost like it could be anything. And I know that there is like scientific evidence, studies done on like writing down your gratefuls, but it's almost like it's just the habit itself that brings me comfort. I feel like it could be like, I don't know, like lighting this candle and like staring at it for like 1 minute. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like there's something comfort with it because the habit becomes familiar. And so when the world is like, you know, you're like, oh my God, it's like there's this thing that grounds you. So like in yoga, we would call it like, that's what it would be kind of referred to as a grounding practice, where it like brings you back down into reality, into the present moment, and into the fact that like you're still here, you know, even though it seems as though we're being like, you know, things are out of control and you're being swept away or whatever, those feelings of anxiety. So it's just interesting because that's what I find. It's like, doesn't even really matter what I say I'm grateful for. It's just like doing it is what matters.
Do you write it or do you type it on your computer?
I type it.
Yeah. So that's another thing, another like problem you've solved for yourself, because you found that you did not like the physical act of writing, which I really love the physical act of
Mhm.
writing. So then there's just
It
a little
kept
bit.
me from doing it though, because I was
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, Jen's like this purist. She's like literally journaling. Like, I don't really want to do that. And so I felt like my way like wasn't quite like as good, which is like
Mhm.
really silly. It's just like whatever works for you. Like, and again, like you're doing it because you like it, right? We talk about this a lot because like with like just like as an example, Jen plays lots of sports and I was feeling like kind of inadequate because she was like playing tennis and volleyball. And I was like, I don't do things like that. Like, I just don't, and Jen was like, dude, I think it's fun. Like, that's why I do it, and I'm like, oh, right. And that's why I was doing my hip hop class because I was like, oh, I like things too. It's just like volleyball, really. I mean, I don't hate it. I just don't love
I
it.
like things too.
Yeah, but it was like, why am I looking right? I mean, I look up to Jen, obviously, she's awesome, but like that can be problematic because it's like, okay, I can be inspired by Jen, but it doesn't mean I need to like do all the same exact thing she's doing. But like finding things that I enjoyed, and that was for me my hip hop class, which I am devastated.
Yes, don't even get me started on my lack of tennis. But just making those little adjustments, so being flexible and, kind of problem solving and tweaking. And it gets all tied up with like perfectionism and if,
Yeah.
like this idea that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. So as you're trying to incorporate habits, but I think one of the things that we talked about is all these things that we're mentioning are things that we're adding in. And that was something that I found when I did my 30 days of habits was the times when I was subtracting something from my life, it was much harder for me to do. But when I added something in, the feeling, it was felt more fulfilling, I guess, in a way. So adding in the gratitude, adding drinking some water, and that gets me, if we want to focus on the nutrition end of things, to instead of worrying about all the quote unquote bad foods that you're eating, like what can you make sure that you do include in addition to the ice cream and the chips and all that stuff. So like eat some vegetables, eat some fruit, eat some fiber. So maybe worrying a little bit less about all of the junk food that you're eating and making sure that you do include some healthy foods.
Yes. Yeah, I really like that. And I think that it is so important right now to avoid deprivation because we are all stressed. Even if you feel like, "Ah, I'm handling this pretty well, whatever." Like we are herd animals, like we are animals and we're social creatures and we are all affected to this in one degree or another. So yeah, the idea of like that adding in and enriching your life instead of feeling like restricting, depriving yourself. And again, that can be things other than nutrition. It just happens to be for most of us. That's
Mhm.
how we think healthy eating looks, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, what do I take out of my diet? And that's going to make me healthier. That's going to make me less of a slob. I'm not like potato chips, like, down the front of my shirt or whatever. It's like that's so important because during times when we are stressed, we have a lot less willpower. And if you start to psychologically feel like you're restricting yourself or you're deprived, it will lead to a binge. So I completely agree with Jen that this is not a time to like start keto or whatever. I mean, if you're doing that, I support, I support your choices. It's like a free country, obviously. But if I would just be very careful with that right now because those kinds of changes require a lot of bandwidth. It requires a lot of mental energy to organize yourself in such a way to go into something like a restrictive diet. And I just don't think now would be the time to do it, even though um, it might seem alluring because it gives you a sense of control. And I was talking to Jen because I do follow a lot of psychologists that deal specifically with eating disorders. And they have been writing articles about the fact that right now in this time of crisis, a lot of people who have eating disorders might begin to start like either being more extreme with their restriction, or vice versa. Like if you are suffering from something like bulimia, your binges might be worse or whatever, because it gives us like a sense of control. So like, oh, if I could just control like what I'm putting in my body and the way my body looks, then it feels like you have control over the world, which, we don't. So just being mindful of that, I think is like, that's my PSA. I got to let Ruby in.
Oh my God, I'm left alone. What was I going to talk about? What else? Oh, I think that one of the biggest priorities right now that makes sense for everybody is our health. And if you're eating maybe more sweets than you normally do, and that means putting on a little bit of weight, you can probably still be healthy weighing 10 extra pounds. So this might not be a great time to lose a ton of weight if that stress on your body is going to be detrimental to your health. So just keeping, your choices as you're making your choices, like thinking about their impact on your health. So, maybe you're enjoying having some wine every night. Okay, that's fine. But are you having so many glasses of wine that it's affecting your sleep? Because that's really going to affect your health. And if your depression is getting worse, that's affecting your health. So, making sure that those choices, you're finding a balance of including those things that you like and maybe are kind of comforting you in a way without really seriously impacting your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wanted to give a personal anecdote for habits that really fell to the wayside. One of which was my sleep hygiene, which I was actively working on before, all of this happened. And I had, talked to Sunny about the fact that I wanted to stop eating after 7. And again, that wasn't for weight loss reasons. It's just because if you eat after 7, it can disrupt your sleep. So I wanted to stop eating after 7 and no phone, absolutely no screen scroll, nothing like that after 7 o'clock from Monday through Thursday. Or maybe I did Sunday through Thursday. But anyway, so that completely got blown out of the water because I just felt like we were both consuming so much news and we would just be on our phones late, reading, and it was just ridiculous. And then I had this about the time that Jen had this idea for this webinar. I don't even know what we're doing, the live about the, this is the new normal. We need to help people get back to their healthy habits. I was like, that's so funny because I've been acting well, we're in a time of freaking crisis. I can't, yeah, sure. I'm just going to do whatever. I mean, this is crazy, right? It's I'm going to stay up however late I want and the rules are out the window. And it really felt like that. I really was it was almost like I was on vacation. It was very weird. And then I was like, yeah, that's so true because guess what? I'm not feeling great staying on my phone till 11:30 at night and then finally falling asleep, because my eyes can't stay open. That doesn't feel great to me. Eating frosting out of a can at 10:30 at night while I'm watching Netflix. Yeah, I wake up at 3 a.m. I feel hot and I'm restless. My body's trying to digest this sugar. So I just think Jen is saying, it's kind of thinking of these changes. It doesn't have to do with freaking weight loss or changing the way your body looks. Just forget about that. How are these things making you feel? And so that's one thing. I talked to Sunny last night and I said, hey, remember how we were doing this? And he was so on board. He was relieved when I mentioned it. He's like, yes, can we go back to that? So we, last night was our first night going back. It was 7:20 that we, got off of our phones, got into bed. It was still light out, but I'm like,
oh my God,
to bed and I'm just going to read. And I read till 9:30 and, fell asleep. So that's just kind of an example of one of my habits that I really, out the window. And now I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
So it's just an example.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always, through this whole thing, I have my little planner book that I like. And one thing I like about it that it has on it is it gives you, it has 4 habits for the week. And I make those fairly easy. So one of them was my neck was really sore. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do yoga every day. Maybe I'll do 30 minutes of yoga every day. And I was like, crap, that's a lot.
So much.
Yeah. So I finally just put in there 2 minutes of stretching. And for my neck, that literally meant while I was watching TV, just spending some time, literally moving my neck in directions that it wasn't going throughout the day. So I had to find that small enough to make it happen. And then there's also just that, like, it feels good to achieve that every day, to check that off and be like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
So,
A whiteboard is also a really great thing if you're not into having a journal, but you want to kind of have these reminders is having a white. I love whiteboards. Writing on them, erasing them.
Good times. I listened to an awesome podcast. I'm going to post it today. But this guy, Dr. Peter Attia, does his podcast with his 10-year-old daughter, talking about COVID-19 and her asking questions and him answering them. And he was kind of talking about how the U.S. government kind of failed us in this. And he was talking about how when you make choices that don't have your future in mind, like you make the choices that give you the immediate satisfaction without thinking of the future, what the consequences are. And even this 10-year-old girl understands that, like, yes, sure, eating ice cream all day, watching TV all night, doing all those things you want to do are going to have long-term consequences. So it's that idea of having a little discipline so that you can get those rewards in the long run.
Yeah. This also reminds me so much of The Slight Edge, the book, which everyone should buy. It is like literally that is the entire book. It's just getting people. It's so hard to like get it into your head that like 2 minutes of stretching, if you do it every single day, a year from now is going to yield like very good results, as opposed to saying, I'm going to do yoga 30 minutes, 5 days a week, and then you don't. Right. And then it goes by and nothing has been accomplished. And it's like, we have such a fixation on these quantum leaps of like, oh, I'm just going to have this epiphany, or I'm going to, it's like, I'm going to get, 6-pack abs in 6 weeks or whatever. It's like, it's so alluring to have those quick fixes, but it's just so incredibly unrealistic. And we get caught in this pattern, which is exactly what yo-yo dieting is, right? Where like, you're just looping around and around and you're never actually like getting anywhere. And it's so addictive because there's something so exciting and like sexy about like starting a new diet or starting a new routine or, whatever it is. It's like, there's something very alluring about it. Alluring is the word of the day. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm looking down just because I wrote a few things that I just wanted to make sure I got to. So Jen mentioned the new normal, and I think that it's really important to really take a look at what your schedule looks like right now. Like for instance, I have a client, I was training her like after work 3 days a week. So like 5:30 at night, she would come in to the gym. Now, after reassessing, she's working from home. I'm seeing her midday. We meet at 1 because it's really nice for her to get to break. She's working from home, sitting, at her kitchen counter, basically. So now we're working at 1 o'clock, instead of keeping that 5:30 time. And she was really enjoying it because, it's a great way to like break up the day. She feels energized going back to work. So just kind of reevaluating, like if you were working out at 6 a.m. every day before work, is that still the best time? So as much as we're talking about bringing back, your good habits, at the same time, there might be some changes that need to be made to the habits that you were doing based on your new schedule and the new situation that you're in.
Yeah, I think one for me, I've tried to wake up at the same time every day within like an hour. But now I've just moved that time a little later and it's lovely.
Yes.
Let me tell you, 6:30 is a lot nicer than 5:30.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah. And I think that for some people, as much as I did say like no deprivation, no restriction, really extreme restrictions at this time, it might be based on what I'm hearing from my clients and what I'm reading online of people's experience with their food eating while they're home all day. I think it might be worth scheduling out some meals. Because what's happening with a lot of my clients is they're just kind of like grazing all day because the kitchen is like right there. And I think scheduling out meals would be really helpful. I mean, base it on hunger, like when are you generally getting hungry in the morning? Okay, like 9 o'clock, like take a break. And I think that might be really helpful. And then kind of between those times, the kitchen is closed, you know what I mean? And that's going to look different in every household. You know, if you have kids and partners that are kind of rummaging around, that can be difficult. But maybe even putting an alarm in your phone, like, all right, lunchtime, like get up, like do a few stretches, and grab your whatever you're going to have for lunch.
I was also thinking it's a good time to focus on some undistracted eating time. So another way to maybe not focus on the deprivation, no limitations or how much you eat, but like, can you sit down without a screen and eat?
Mm-hmm.
And that can include the snacks too. And that might be helpful. And tell yourself, like, sure, I can take this pint of ice cream and I can eat as much of it as I want. I just can't do it while I'm watching TV.
I love that.
And that might be helpful. That was one of my favorite challenges in my year of 30-day challenges, was the undistracted eating.
It's so hard.
Yeah, it is hard. So once again, like, what would we do? Would we say every meal has to be undistracted, or would we say let's pick one meal to do without the screen? And that would be a good goal.
Yeah, I could handle one meal.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I'm trying to look through my notes here. It looks like I've gotten to everything. All of the major points. I do just want to go on a slight rant, which does tend to happen at the end of these.
All right. Can't wait.
But I mean, we already talked about it, but I just want everyone to recognize that having too much food available is a privilege. Okay. And like, I'm just getting like a little bit, I understand that most people are just joking around, like, oh my God, I'm going to be so fat. Like at the end of this, like, I understand, like, there's some funny memes or whatever, but like, that is like very casual, like fat shaming that's happening. And it just kind of is driving me a little nuts right now, because I think that people, again, everyone would say, defend themselves, just be like, oh my God, I'm totally kidding. Like, I'm not trying to make any fat people feel bad. Like, I'm not, whatever. But it's like, I don't know, if the worst thing that happens to you is that you like gain 5 pounds or 10 pounds or 50 pounds or 20 pounds during this quarantine, like, you're very lucky. And I understand it's meant to be a joke, but I think we need to be really careful about how casually we are, like, basically, making fat people a joke. And it's not funny for people who are in fat bodies or bigger bodies. That's not funny. You know what I mean? Like, we don't make like gay jokes anymore because it's not funny. And like, we realize that now, that saying like somebody, whatever, like using a slur, like, oh my God, I'm just joking, dude. Like, yeah, but like, that's not funny anymore. And there's a reason for that, because we recognize that people who are not straight, do not identify as heterosexual, are marginalized. So it's like not funny to be making fun of them. And the same way that people in fat bodies are marginalized, like they are, like, therefore, like, as people who have thin privilege, like, we don't make fun of them, right? And so again, I'm not trying to make because I feel like this will trigger people get really defensive, which I totally get, because anytime anybody points out anything I'm doing that, because I want everyone to think I'm so nice, and I'm a nice person, and I'm not saying anyone's not nice. You're all nice, and I'm sure your intentions are pure. But like, just think about that a little bit more next time you post like a meme about like me before, quarantine, and me after, like, like, and having this joke about being, so fat when you are come out of quarantine. I just think it just needs to be mentioned, because that is diet culture. And it is detrimental to have these, like, it's almost more detrimental to have it be so casual. Like, like, to me, that's almost like more frightening, how we're just like, oh my God, isn't that so like funny and like cute, like that, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really not. It's highly offensive when you really think about what joke is being made. And I would say this, think about it, if you had a kid, okay, and you had like an adorable chubby kid, right? Like with big cheeks and like, oh my God, just the cutest little kid. And like, there was a meme that was like, oh, my kid before quarantine, who's like this fit kid. And then picture of your kid, haha, after quarantine. It's like your chubby, adorable kid, right? It's like, think about it that way. Like, it's not cool.
All right. That was a good rant, Justine. Good job.
Everyone, all of our, whoever was watching slowly, like the numbers just
It's
fall
important.
off. They're like, oh my God.
Important to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we always kind of talk about that walking that line between wanting to improve yourself and accepting yourself for where you are. And it can sound kind of cheesy and overused, but it's a practice. That's what it boils down to. So if you're trying to eat better right now and you end up eating more food than you expected or something that you didn't initially intend to eat, then just kind of like, taking a breath, that is over, and moving on from there. It's important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just recognizing too, there's no morality or like virtue behind like what you're putting in your body for your food, like it's so easy to feel like so virtuous, like, oh my God, I had this day where I ate exactly what I planned to eat. Like I'm such a good person, and then the next day, somebody, like we have a birthday cake in the house right now. You know what I mean? Because it was Sunny's birthday on Monday. Like I'm eating birthday cake. Like, I don't know. It's just, there's no moral high ground and there's no innate goodness or badness of food.
Right. I think
and acceptance is not the same as approval. Like Jen is saying, it's like just accepting your body doesn't mean that you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm so sexy. Like I could just walk around naked like all day in front of everyone because I just love myself. Like that's not what body acceptance is. Like that's just not what it is. It just like it doesn't mean that, so just keep that in mind too. It's two very different things. So yeah, just to recap, simplify your goal habit until it's doable. So keep shrinking it down until you can achieve it. Like Jen said, think about what to include instead of deprivation. What can you add into your meals? Getting in those veggies. It doesn't mean you have to take out the tater tots. Jen, I know you love your tater tots.
I gotta keep my tots.
But it just means, right, adding in vegetables you enjoy.
To the meal. Adding broccoli to my mac and cheese.
That's so good. Yum, that sounds amazing right now. Thinking about scheduling meals if you're working from home. See if that maybe works for you if you're struggling with this kind of constant grazing or disorganized eating at home. Undistracted eating, maybe choosing one meal to put everything aside and slowly eat.
He sounds like you like that idea so much.
I'm doing an okay job at it. Okay. It's hard though. It's really not easy. I get distracted very easily.
Like a goldfish.
Yes.
Or a raccoon. It's a raccoon.
Yes. And yeah, I think that was all the major points that we made.
Yes. And this was fun. It was really good to get to have the dual screen and to see you. And
I know. This is so awesome. And Jen and I will be making a schedule, just like we've made a schedule for our group fitness classes, virtual group fitness classes. We will be starting to schedule these lives where we are talking. So they're more regular, so you can kind of know when to expect them. So yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Yes. And then next we are going to do Sunday. I think it looks like 9, right? For Easter.
Yes. 9 a.m.
Yeah. And we'll do the dual screen. So we'll do 30 minutes of workout and 30 minutes of yoga.
Yes.
I'm excited to spend Easter with you guys.
I'm going to have to get an outfit.
Yeah. Cause I have an outfit.
I know. All right, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.